I'm using a size 4 for the pattern, so I took two size 2 needles. Oh, sorry, my dad's going by with a lawnmower. He's out there like every day doing something to the yard. I don't know. Remind me never to get a house with a yard. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Welcome to episode 192 of the Love and Stitches podcast. Today is Monday, July 31st, but by the time you're watching this, it's going to be a brand new month, which means I'm going to be talking about my plans for August today. I kind of was looking back through my July plans. I feel like the month of July went by really fast. I cannot believe it's August, and I've seen a lot of people just on social media and stuff, saying the same thing, that they can't believe how the time has flown. And especially for us, because we are here in Tennessee at my parents' house, in case you're wondering where I am, if you've missed the last few episodes, we're in Nashville, Tennessee for a little bit longer. This is the second to last podcast that you're going to see here in Tennessee. Before we get into the podcast, I just want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Book of the Month. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I love to start every single day with knitting and reading. And Book of the Month helps me discover new authors and new books that I absolutely love. So here's how it works. Each month, the editorial team reads through hundreds of new books. Then they select 5 to 7 of the best ones for me to pick from. Then my books are delivered straight to me in a bright blue box with beautiful hardcovers and the Book of the Month seal of approval. This month I'm trying out 2 new to me authors, and I decided to select something to kind of satisfy both of my obsessions right now. So one of them is a little more of a thriller and the other one is a love story. All of the books are categorized by genre and then have lengthy descriptions. So the only difficult thing about picking out your books is narrowing them down. I love not having to wonder what I'm going to read next. Book of the Month has always delivered amazing books to me, and in the 4 months that I've been a subscriber, I have found so many new authors that I would read again. Use my link below or head to bookofthemonth.com to sign up. We are starting out with an FO. I was hoping to have 2 FOs this week. I am this close, but one is pretty good, and I should have another one here next week. So the first one is, oh my gosh, everything is dark because I'm wearing a dark shirt. It is the Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I made this one for Kent, and it was something that I've been planning for a few months now. Ever since I finished up a blanket, I wanted to use the blanket yarn in the hat. So if you're kind of wondering, why is that so exciting? It's just a plain black hat. Wait until you see the inside. Oh, I just love how this came out. So all of the yarn in the stripes is from an advent. I used the advent first to make a crochet blanket for our dog Toaster. And I had so much left over. I had almost 5 grams or more than 5 grams, I honestly can't remember, of each of those mini skeins. And I had 31 colors. And since all of this yarn is Pokemon themed, I really wanted to make something for my husband, Kent, because he's a big Pokemon fan. And we knew, this is a lot of colors. It probably wouldn't be something that he would want to wear all of those colors. So I thought, what if I made a hat where one side is solid and one side is striped? And so that's what I did. And once I really started going on this hat, I could not stop. So the week before last, I did all of the main color. I actually started at this end with the main color because I wanted to see how many rows I would have in the hat, including the crown and the body, so that I could know how many rows each stripe needed to be. Then last week I started on the stripes, and once I started on the stripes, I could not stop and did not stop and actually finished this a week earlier than I had planned. So I'm really, really happy with that. It's all nice and blocked now. Somebody asked a question about how to block this hat, and I just soak it in cold water with soap, and then I lay it flat like this to dry. It's already double layered, so you don't want to double it up to dry it. And I've never found that hats really need to be stretched or curved or anything like that. I just always lay my hats flat. So I laid it flat to dry like this. After, I don't know, maybe 12 hours had gone by, I kind of like turned it part of the way and switched how it was folded and let it dry the rest of the way. With these Musselburgh hats, they are double layered, so the stripes are essentially just lining, but it does take a little while to get them lined up, so you kind of have to flip them back and forth, kind of give it a little shake to try to get the crowns lined up here. And I'm really, really pleased with how it came out. So my hope was that you wouldn't be able to see the stripes at all when worn with this side out. And I doubt Kent is ever going to wear the striped side out because that's just not his personality, but he knows that the stripes are in there and he gets the joy of having that in the hat. I think of it like, you know, those beautiful suits that are just blue or black, but the inside is purple or red or like some kind of fun color, and you only get like a little glimpse of it. So it turned out really, really great. So I do have leftover yarn still. Where did, oh, my label is way over here. Hang on, I can reach it. Oh gosh. I don't know how it got all the way over there, but I have about 50, a little over 50 grams left of this black yarn, and it is also Fangirl Fibers. I don't know if I said that before. It is Fangirl Fibers, the whole hat is. And originally this color was called Gray Skull. Actually, I think it had another name originally, but now it has come out in the Haunted Mansion collection, and it's called Mr. Gracie, I think. But you can get this color now from Fangirl Fibers. It's a really great black tonal, so it has a little bit of variation in it, and I really like this base. It's the 80/20 base, fingering weight. And the Pokemon yarn, I've got it all organized. It doesn't look pretty, but it is all organized in this 2-gallon Ziploc bag. You can see by the Sharpie crossed out that it's held many different things. But each of the 31 colors are accounted for. They are in those little pouches with the stitch marker that they originally came with and the card. And I am going to be giving that away to somebody very soon. It won't be public here on the channel, but there have been a few people that I've been kind of keeping on a list that are Pokemon fans that I'm going to be randomly choosing from and sending to. I did say that I was going to also send this yarn, but I forgot. I have another thing down here that I was planning to make Kent. Wow, it's really bright. This yarn is not this bright. It's just because I have lights on in here to get enough light for everyone to see. Maybe if I go like that. There we go. Now you can see it. So Kent bought himself this yarn at Cake Palooza last year. It is a really lovely neon green. And neon green and black are one of his favorite team, the Dallas Stars. It's one of their like alternate fun jersey colors. So when I got this black yarn for the original hat, it's actually almost the same base as this one. It's an 80/20, but this one is merino wool and this one is BFL, but they're still both 2-plies. They're both wool nylon and the same, so they're very similar. So I decided I can use these together. So I'm actually going to be hanging on to this. Sorry, I thought I was going to give it away, but I think it's smarter for me to hang on to it than buy a whole nother skein. So one day, Kent will be getting another hat. I don't know exactly what he's going to want that hat to look like, or if it will be a double layered hat or not, but hopefully I should have plenty of yarn for it. So I'm hanging on to that leftover for now, and I need to make a plan for it because I don't know what to do. Okay, what else did I want to tell you about this hat? Oh yes, the final measurements. So originally I had planned to make this hat, well, hold on, let me start over. The Musselburgh hat can be made in so many different ways. You can make it so it's slouchy, you can make it so it has a brim that folds up, but Kent didn't want any of that. He wanted it to be fitted, and I'm gonna flip it around so it's easier to see. He wanted it fitted and he didn't want to fold up the brim. So essentially, this is exactly how it's going to be worn, of course, on the black side. And so my original goal was to have 12 inches of knitting between the crowns. You can see the decreases a little bit better. So basically from right here all the way to the other side where the crown begins would be 12 inches. But then I remembered that when we did 12 inches on his hat, it was because on a previous hat, it was because we didn't have enough yarn. And so I had to shorten it a little bit. So this time I tried it on him. We decided to add a little more length. So what I ended up doing was and it blocked out a little bigger. So I think it was about 6.5 inches of I'll pull this apart again, 6.5 inches of this main color. And I wanted this one a little bit longer than this one so that you wouldn't see any of the stripe when it folded up. And then this one was more like 5.75 inches. When they blocked out, it ended up being a little bit longer. I think this one blocked out to almost 7 inches. This one was about 6 inches. And in total, they were more like 13 inches between the crowns, which turned out perfect. Now, when I started the stripes on this side, technically the middle is right here, about 3 rows into the black yarn. So this is halfway in between. And I think I had 66 or 65 rows. And then I started with 3 rows of the black for the second side because again, I wanted it to fold in half, not at the stripe, but at the black yarn so that the stripes wouldn't be seen. If I do something like this again, I would probably add a little bit more of that main color. I mean, right now you can see that the 3 rows of black, essentially they just cover that turn side. They don't really come up into the lining. So I'd probably do more like 6 rows to transition. I think that would be a little safer. But all in all, I think it worked out. Once you get it folded, he hasn't been wearing it. It's almost perfect. Like, I don't know how to show this. Like you can see how it's just black, just enough main color that the lining isn't showing, but maybe a few more rows would have been a little bit better. So if you're doing something like this where you want to have, it doesn't have to be stripes, but just another color inside that never shows, maybe go a touch longer than I did on the main color. I only went 3 rows longer, so maybe do something like 6 rows, about half an inch or something like that. So all in all, I think it just turned out perfect. I'm so happy with it. Again, I'm going to hang on to the black yarn and hopefully this Pokemon yarn, I can get it shipped off to somebody this week. Next up is my mini mock neck tank. And oh boy, do I have a story for you about this project this week. Okay, so let me show you the yarn and the design first. I was so hoping this would be done. I think I have maybe 3 rows or so left on it. And then it has a tubular bind off that takes a little while. So I will finish it today, but it's not quite done yet. So this is the mini mock neck tank by Jessie May Designs. I think I've been saying Jessie Made Designs because it looks like made with the designs. I need to check on that actually. Is that actually correct or is it Jessie May Designs? I don't know if nobody has heard me say that or... No, it says Jessie Made Designs. Okay, so that's right. I was getting so confused. On Instagram, I guess I used the hashtag today, Jessie May Designs, not 2Ds. Okay, that was a side tangent. Anyway, this yarn is Moonglow Yarn Company, and the colorway is Wild Orchid. And it's turning out so pretty. The color looks so different depending on the lighting that I'm in. So the true color of it is more like a Barney pinky purple, if you can imagine that. But sometimes it looks a lot more red depending on the light. There's not a lot of great lighting here in our house, but when I get outside or I get in really bright lighting, you can see the color more accurately. So that's actually pretty accurate right now. So here's what happened this week. I think I showed last week some pictures of what it looked like before I made any hacks to it. And literally, I hacked into this. So actually, I have the 2 pictures here. When I first tried this on, after doing a blocking, like to kind of check the length, I realized the front was too big. I was getting kind of some like extra fabric on the front, and it wasn't just the armholes themselves, it was just the front because the front was actually knit longer than the back according to the pattern. And I think that works on some people's bodies, but it doesn't work on my body because I guess I just have a small chest or something about that my chest combined with my shoulder, my yeah, armpits, or I don't know. It just didn't work on me, and that's fine. So I needed to make a change if I was going to actually wear this once it was done. I kind of debated like maybe it will be fine, but I knew ultimately I wouldn't wear it if it was gappy like that. So I had a couple choices to make. I could unravel it. Some people gave other suggestions that I just didn't really think I was capable of, or I didn't really feel like they would necessarily help the issue. And so what I ended up doing was cutting out an inch of just the front above the armholes and grafting it back together. So I have some photos to take you through that journey. And for my editor's sake, aka Kent, I have numbered them for you, Kent. So let's follow along with this little photo story. Hang on, where are they? Okay, here we go. So first thing I did was I took 2 smaller needles. I'm using a size 4 for the pattern, so I took 2 size 2 needles. Oh, sorry, my dad's going by with a lawnmower. He's out there like every day doing something to the yard. I don't know. Remind me never to get a house with a yard. Back to the tank top. I took 2 smaller US2 needles and I put one in just above an increase row, and then I put the other one in just above the armpit. And in between those 2 needles, there were no increases, there was no changes to the stitch count. So I knew that if I could get the live stitches, I would have the same number of stitches and I could graft them together. So I essentially just took out the last inch of the front. So if I ever go back and knit this again, I would just not knit the last inch of the front before joining the underarm. So it took a couple tries to find which rows I needed, but basically I just picked them up exactly like an afterthought heel. Then, this is photo 2, I cut one row, cut one spot into the tank top. Now I chose intentionally the spot on the left-hand side because basically the way that the direction that you've knitted, it's going to unravel naturally, but the other way it's very hard to like unpick it. So I knew I wanted to cut it closer to, how do I explain this? I wanted to cut it close to the top needle because that was not the way it was going to unravel. But I wanted to cut it far away enough from the top needle that I would have a nice long strand. I ended up doing this not exactly right because even though I cut close to the top needle, but in the second row from the top needle, I also cut very close to the left-hand side, which meant I only had about this much yarn from the second row and then the yarn from the first row, not enough to actually graft it. What I should have done is come to the middle of the tank top and cut into the second row. Then I would have had 1.5 rows of yarn to graft with. This ended up not mattering later on, but this is kind of, I'm just taking you through the live feed. Some of you were watching on my Instagram stories as I did this, and I actually saved them all to my Instagram highlight about this project if you want to see a little bit more in depth some of the explanation. So after cutting, I then unraveled everything. It's kind of annoying in the beginning because you're having to unpick some stuff, but then it unravels pretty easily. So where I wanted to have a nice long strand of yarn for grafting, I did not. But on the other side, I had a whole little ball of yarn, which was plenty of yarn for grafting. So what I did then, this is photo 4, I flipped the whole thing around and I used that longer ball of yarn for grafting because for me being right-handed, I need to go from right to left to graft. And the yarn that I needed was on the left-hand side. So instead I just rotated the whole thing. Does that make sense? I didn't know if I could do this. I didn't know if it would matter if I grafted in the other direction from the way that I knit, but it ended up not mattering and it still looked fine. So number 5, here's what it looks like after I grafted it. It did not look great. Keep in mind, I was using yarn that was very wrinkled and ramen-like because it had been knit and blocked and stayed in that way for a while. So that was a little bit tricky. And plus I was trying to keep it loose, but also even with the stitches, I did the best that I could. So I tried it on at that point. I don't have a picture of this, but I tried it on and it was looking like it was fitting better, which was great. But I was really worried that the grafting was never going to look the same as the other stitches. So I decided, number 6, to do a block. I blocked it again, soaked it, blocked it. At this point, my live stitches on the bottom were still on plastic tubing or rubber tubing. So it was pretty easy to just block and set out. It only took about 24 hours to dry. Luckily, right away, like I left it for a pretty long time blocking, probably an hour. Usually I just do 20, 30 minutes, but I really wanted those stitches to even out. And you could tell right away that those stitches were much smoother after blocking. So I was like, phew, thank goodness. There were still a few that didn't look perfect. So after the fact, I took a tapestry needle, tried to even them out, and then I will be blocking the sweater, the tank top one more time once I actually finish the bottom. So I think by then all the stitches will be really even, but it looks so much better. So then last photo here, number 7, I tried it on one more time and it's looking like such a better fit. I don't have that little gap in the armholes anymore, but I also needed to check how taking an inch out of the front affected the length because it definitely did. And so I decided to add a little more length before doing the ribbing. So that's the surgery. So yeah, it was a big week. And because it was something that I didn't want to do all at once. I kind of, whenever I have really heavy thinking, knitting things to do, it's not just something that I can do on like a normal night. Usually I want to do it in the daytime because 1, daylight, 2, my brain power is better. And just, I don't know, I just feel better during the daytime than I do at night. And so I did one part on Wednesday, one part on Friday. I think I blocked it on Saturday. Anyway, it took me many days to build up to it, many days to do it. So I didn't actually spend a ton of time doing any knitting on here, but once I had blocked it for a second time and knew all was well, I was ready to start on the bottom. So you can see my light bulb stitch marker right there is where I started with it maybe yesterday, actually. I might have just done all of this yesterday. So I realized I wanted to add 1 more inch. So I've added 2 inches to the body from what the pattern recommends for my size. I think I'm at about 10 inches for the body before the rib. Once I'm done with the rib, I should have around 11.5 inches. And now I am on my ribbing needle and I am working the rib and I do not have much more to go. I'm so excited. It's going to get the same bind off here as the neck, a nice tubular bind off, which looks so good. I also already woven the ends on the neck and the extra ends I had down here from grafting it because I just wanted everything to be tidy and as done as possible. You can see, I mean, I'm looking at it, I can see it. Can you see it you can see right, oh, well, I guess it's not as visible as I thought. Right here, no, right here, yes, no, up here. Up here, you can see where I grafted it. But the thing that I think is helping is that this yarn is a tonal. So there's already stripy bits of dark and light, like darker and lighter yarns. So it's kind of a distraction from a line that is more textural than color based. So it hides things. And I am hoping with another block, it will be even more seamless into here. So big week for the blocking, or big week for the tank top. And I guess a big week for blocking. I don't know. My brain is not all with it today. Can you tell? Sometimes I feel like I can definitely tell when I'm like not all the way there. Some days a little bit of brain fog here, but doing the best that we can. So hopefully next week when I'm recording this podcast, you will see me wearing this beautiful tank. It's a good thing I had more brain power earlier in the week, or I guess last week, because I have started 2 new projects. Technically, they're still in the swatch stage, but I'm counting this as part of preparing for the project. I also wanted to share I learned a great tip that I realized I have sort of been doing over the last few months, but didn't really realize why it was helping me until I saw it written down. And I saw this tip from, they're JP Knits and Things, I think, on Instagram. I think so. I believe their name is Jennifer. But anyway, the tip was that it's a great idea to start swatching for your next project before you have completed your current one. So I started swatching for these 2 new sweater projects before I completed my tank top. Reason being is that then you will feel less desire to rush through the swatch, because if you wait until you're completely done with all your projects and then you're in the swatch stage, you're going to feel really antsy to just get cast on, right? But if you're combining the two, doing some crossover, I feel like it's more enjoyable to swatch because the swatch is like, oh, something new is coming. I can try out a new stitch pattern. I can try out a new yarn. And then while it's washing and blocking and you're waiting to make decisions, you still have another project on the needles. So I've been doing this. I do this sometimes with my projects, but after reading that, I decided to be very intentional about these next two. So the first project that I am going to be starting very soon is the Tessellated Pullover by Andrea Mowry. It is this year's Rhinebeck sweater cowl, and I have completed my swatch. I'm hoping this is the only swatch, but you never know. So here is my swatch. There are 3 different yarns in here, 2 from Farmer's Daughter's Fibers and 1 from Spin Cycle. I guess technically 1 from Farmer's Daughter's Fibers, 1 from Spin Cycle, and 1 from both of them would be the more accurate thing to say. So I purchased a kit. Excuse me. Hold on. Let me get a sip of water so I don't lose my voice anymore. All right. So I purchased a kit. I think it was called the Alien's Daughter, although I'm not 100% sure exactly what it was called, but I can tell you my colors. So for the main color, and it is so, okay, so it looks kind of blue here. When you get outside though, it looks completely green. It's a very interesting color. This is the Spinster's Daughter, which is they're saying it's a new base or a new yarn, which I guess technically it is, but I'm almost certain it's the same yarn base that they used with Magpie last year, but instead of Magpie dyeing it, the Farmer's Daughter dyed it, which I'm really happy if that's the case because I really liked that yarn. I used that yarn in my Citrine Light, and I'm really enjoying this yarn as well. It's a sport weight, 100% superwash wool, 300 yards of skein, and my color is called York. It's a 2-ply, it's really round, and it's just a joy to knit with. I really like it. The next color I have is my Surrey, and it's a really light, soft pink. There's a little bit of like yellowy gold in here, and this is the Farmer's Daughter Odang. And I've used this one before too. I think it was part of last year's sweater actually. Was it? I don't remember. Oh, it wasn't, but it was part of mine, I think. Now I can't remember. I could go back and look at Ravelry. But this one is called A Case of You. All right, there you go, camera. Get to work. Last one is Spin Cycle yarns. And this one, sorry, I'll hold it up a little bit longer. This one, I don't know what in the world this base is called. I think it's called Dyed in the Wool, but where most labels have the base name on the back, I guess not most labels, but a lot of labels, I think this one's on the front. I actually just realized it says Dyed in the Wool up here. So I think that's the base, and my color is called Big Sky. It's really beautiful. It's got blues and grays, a little bit of pink, and a little bit of yellow. So you can see a bunch of yellow came out in my swatch, which I'm kind of grateful for because I don't know if the yellow is definitely not my favorite. I don't know if I really want it in my sweater at all, but I don't think I'll be able to tell until I knit through some of these other colors coming up in the center here. So I'm going to start with like the bluey gray, go into blue, and by the time I get to yellow again, I'll kind of make that decision if I want to keep the yellow in or if I simply want to just snip the yarn and cut out the yellow. So I can do some management of it if I want to, but I did get to swatch. This swatch is mostly dry. So what I did is I did one of those fakey swatches in the round where, I don't know why it's like gapped in the middle. That must have been how I laid it down. But I did a really, really long strand here in the back. And instead of casting on enough stitches to actually join in the round, I cast on enough stitches to have about 6 inches across because I wanted it to be larger than 4 inches. That way I can measure 4 inches in the middle. Oh, and I've started putting my swatch information, like how many I casted on and how I did it, into my project page. I just started that with these 2 new projects. So, how to swatch in the round. So you basically knit across the row, and instead of turning, you take your stitches and you slide them back across the cord on your circular needle, back up to your left-hand needle, and then you knit across the front again. So you're always looking at the right side, and then you just carry your yarn across the back. So I used to do this where I didn't leave very much room when I carried my yarn across the back, and then after washing it, I would cut up the middle. That way I could lay my swatch flat. But I recently learned this past year that if you leave the strands nice and long, you can still lay it out flat. But then if you do need to, you can unravel and you'll have all of your yarn intact. Although this won't be very fun to unravel, so I'm hoping that doesn't have to happen, but it would be a possibility in a worst case scenario. So it feels like it might actually still be a little bit damp. I washed it yesterday afternoon. I need to measure it post blocking, but before blocking, I was really close on my stitch gauge. I was maybe 1 stitch off over the 4 inches. My row gauge though, I was really, really off. I think you're supposed to get 38 stitches over 4 inches and I'm getting 29. I don't really know how I could possibly change that. I'm using the exact same yarn. I'm getting close to the stitch gauge. At this point, it would be changing the way that I knit, and I don't want to do that because I like the way that I knit. It's comfortable. So if my row gauge, I'm guessing it really didn't change that much, I will be looking through the pattern and just making sure I can make adjustments along the way so that I don't end up with a really giant armhole or something like that. It should be pretty easy, especially it's a bottom-up knit, so I should have a lot of control over the body length. That should be no problem. And then it will be more about the armhole. So I'll have to take a look. I haven't looked at the shaping and all of that, but I should be able to make it fit me still by monitoring things. I usually have to make adjustments on Andrea's pattern. The adjustments I've made in the past are lengthening the body and lengthening the armholes and going up a sleeve size. I don't know if I'm going to need to do that this time. I was looking at the schematics and the sleeves are drop shoulder, I guess kind of like this. There's a seam right here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but the sleeves go down here instead of like up around the shoulder. And I think they will fit me fine without making modifications, but I am going to keep a close eye because that tends to be an issue that I have with her patterns for my body type. And this just comes from experience from making Andrea's pattern. So I'm very excited. I'm hoping to be casting this one on very, very soon, maybe even tonight. As soon as I finish my tank top though, I'm gonna need a new project because that's my last project that is workable right now. So hopefully you'll see some progress next week. Last one here, and this one's just a baby swatch. I actually need to maybe work on this one a little bit more before casting on my new top, but I've finally figured out what I want to make with my Barbie yarn. So I've got this in my brand new Black Pearl Magic bag from ZK, and I've wound up this beautiful yarn from the Little Wolf Knits, and it's called Barbie World. I have 3 skeins of the fingering weight, and I was playing around with what I wanted to make. I wanted to make a Little Wolf Knits pattern too, because there's just so many of them I want to make. And I was thinking about making either the flare pants, can't remember what they're called, beachcomber flares maybe, or the seashore dress, which has not yet come out yet, but it's coming soon. I made the seaside dress last year, but I used tonal yarn, and I just didn't think I was gonna like the way a variegated and speckled yarn would look over a dress. Even though I really wanted to use pink and I really wanted to make that, I thought, is it worth making a dress with yarn you love and a pattern you love, but that you won't like together? No, the answer is absolutely not. I can always make that dress later with a different yarn. So I decided instead to make Brianna's new pattern that just came out this weekend, and it is called the Shoreline Tank. It is a DK weight pattern. It's all over rib, and it's like nice and fitted. It has really pretty shaping at the bottom that's kind of curved, little slits, and I just think it's going to look really, really great. I'm super into tank tops right now. I need to figure out a way to wear bras with them, or like I bought these little bra cups that I thought I could maybe sew in so that I don't have to wear a bra because I really hate wearing them. But I want some kind of coverage, so I need to play with that so I can actually wear my tanks more. But for now, I'm just going to keep knitting them because it's fun. So because this is a DK weight tank top, I'm holding 2 strands of fingering weight yarn together. I should have enough with my 3 skeins. It might take most of them. So I've got 2 of the skeins wound up and I am holding them together as I knit, just as if they are one strand. It looks like this. You can, if you look really closely, you can tell that there are 2 colors in some of the stitches. It's double stranded, but overall, I don't think it's a huge deal. So I just started swatching this one. I'm also doing the swatch in the round because most of this tank is knit in the round. So that's how I'm swatching. And I really like how it's turning out. And somebody, I believe on my Instagram, you commented and said that you love doing, I think you said something about variegated fingering weight yarn held double because it helps disperse the pooling. And that's exactly what I was hoping for, because I don't really love pooling that spirals. To me, it's just not a look that I desire. And so having the 2 strands of yarn together, so that way the colors are kind of getting mixed, is absolutely perfect. So I'm hoping that that helps with the pooling throughout the project. So I just need to keep going on this one quite a bit longer. Again, I cast on what would be about 6 inches across for the pattern. Ideally, I would knit for about 6 inches long, but we'll see. I feel like I peter out around 3 to 4 inches, but that's still a pretty decent sized swatch. So I need to work on that. I was thinking we're going to a movie today, and I was thinking I needed to get a sock cast on and ready, but I can work on this actually. Maybe I'll have both. I'll do the swatch first because then it won't feel like as much of a chore. So I don't know when I'm going to actually cast this one on. I want to get the sweater going first. That's like first priority. But if I get the sweater going and get that ribbing started on the bottom, and I feel like I need a little extra creativity, this one might get cast on this week too. Okay, I want to talk about project plans. Even though when I was looking through my notebook today and my July plans, they kind of all went to heck, honestly. Where are they? I'm gonna pull these up. I was kind of thinking, is it even worth talking about the plans that didn't become the plans? And I decided, you know what, it is, because that's how plans are sometimes. Plans are just there to provide a structure. They're not something that you have to stick to. They're not something that, because they didn't go right, things are like it's a negative thing. Sometimes plans just change, and that's neither negative or positive. It just is what it is. So I pulled up my July plans. I like to write them like this, where I kind of break down each week. And you can see I started at week 3 because we were moving and getting all transitioned in the first 2 weeks of the month. I really didn't have any plans. And actually, I can see now that I went ahead and wrote down the week 1 as this week, July 31st through August 6th. I like to make my weeks Monday to Sunday. That way I include the full weekend in a week instead of splitting the weekend. So here's some of the things that I had brainstormed when I did this in July. Finishing my Pokemon hat, the Battenberg blanket, Barbie dress, twisted tee shorts and shirt, and the tessellated pullover. So looking at that, I can actually say that I ticked some of those things off the list. 1, I finished my Pokemon hat. I have finished object for the month. It is done. My Battenberg blanket, I explained last week that my yarn did not arrive intact. Some of it came and half of it didn't. A lot of you gave me some tips on going to the post office or calling the postmaster, and I just have to say, where do you guys live that you can do that? I went to the post office and they kind of looked at me like I was crazy when I asked if I could try to find missing mail. So I don't know if it was just me or just the person that I talked to. I also put in a claim online, but essentially it just didn't work out. But not to worry, Molly is going to be sending me more yarn. We made a small change and now I'm just as excited about it as before. It's just going to be a while till I get back to it. So essentially it's not checked off the list, but I couldn't work on it this month. The Barbie dress, I was thinking about making a dress with my Barbie yarn, but I've changed my plans and now I'm doing a tank. the Twisted Tee shorts and shirt, I have some yarn that I'm going to be using for those, but I'm not ready to do that right now. I'm very excited about the projects that I've currently picked out, and so that will kind of just be on hold until I feel the excitement to do that. And then the Tessellated Pullover, I'm starting it. The yarn is here, the swatch is made. I just have to make some decisions about gauge and size, and I can get cast on. So I feel actually really good about how things went for the month, and I'm also really pleased. The only thing that I had broken down into weekly steps was the hat, because that's the only thing I was for sure wanting to finish. I had 6 inches of the black yarn, 6 inches of the stripes, and then the crown was for this week, and it's already finished. So I am ahead of the game, and that feels really, really good. I am not keeping up with my stash this year in exactly the same way that I was last year. I'm not really I'm not keeping a count, I guess I could say, but I am keeping in mind my yarn that's coming in, my yarn that's coming out, and I'm being very mindful of my leftovers because I worked so hard on that at the beginning of this year to get rid of extra minis, get rid of extra leftovers, and so I kind of just made a little note here about the yarn that came in and out. So yarn that has come in this month is 3 skeins of the Barbie yarn. So I've got a project for it. If I have any leftover after that, I'll make another decision if I want to use it myself or give it away or something like that. The whole tessellated kit has come in. That was a lot of yarn. I think it was 5 skeins of a main color, 3 of Spin Cycle, and 2 of the Surrey. So I have a lot of it. I have more than I'm probably going to need, but again, once I'm finished with the sweater, I'll decide what I'm going to do with any leftover yarns. My stomach just growled. And then, is that all the yarn that came in? I think that's all the yarn that came in. Oh, here, Toaster. And then as far as yarn that went out, all of my leftover sock week yarns, they were just partials. Hi, Toaster, you wanna come in? Hi, buddy. Hi. He doesn't love being in this room, but he also doesn't love being upstairs with Ken. See how he wants to leave? How about you just lay down right there? Sorry for kicking the camera. So yeah, my sock week yarns all went out, including the last pair that I finished of my Affinity socks. So I had 50 plus grams of all of those, I think. Bless you. So all of those went out because I knew I wouldn't be using those anymore. And then, oh, the Pokemon yarn. This yarn hasn't yet, but it will be going out. Hopefully by the time the podcast posts, it's already gone. And then I didn't really look through my projects this month, but my only other thing is that I can think of right now is this yarn. And I'm hanging on to it because I have future plans for it. Hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, let's talk about August project plans. Again, I was not sure I was in the mood to do this, but I thought let's just get a page started. I didn't put a lot as far as in the coming weeks what I'm planning to do, but I did have an idea of what I want to do this week. Keeping in mind that I have a lot of transitions coming up this month too. Like I'm telling this to myself, so it's okay if I don't have solid plans, but I also find that making some plans or being intentional, thinking about, hey, next week we are going to be venturing out, hopefully in our van for the very first time, having a lot of new experiences, having a really busy schedule, and it would actually be beneficial for me to take the time this week, the last week that we're here in Tennessee, and get some new projects started so that they're in a spot where I don't have to do a lot of thinking and I can just pick them up and enjoy my knitting. So I am in that stage of casting on and like thinking that way, that planning ahead is going to benefit me is helpful. Anyhow, here's what I brainstormed at first. So here's my August plans. Very similar format. I just throw in everything here in the overview that's on my mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that I will work on it. So I have my mom's socks, my Shoreline tank, my tessellated sweater, pullover, Battenberg blanket, travel blanket, and mini mock neck tank. So let's actually work randomly. The first thing that I want to do is finish this tank top. Hopefully I finish it today. I want to finish it. I want to block it. I will then try it on, make sure I still like the length of it and everything, because if for some reason it comes out and it's too short or too long, I want to go ahead and make changes to it right away and get it finished. The other thing is my Shoreline Tank that I showed, the, come here, swatch, Tessellated Pullover. So those things are good. I don't really know when my Shoreline Tank is going to get started, but I do want to cast on Tessellated this week. I also have in mind some socks for my mom. She picked this yarn out, I want to say in April, from Bliss Yarns. It's a freckled whimsy yarn called Keep On Keepin' On. And so I think I'll start some socks for her today. So I have something that's portable, that's easy, good for the movies, all of that. So that's all of those things. What else did I have on here? My Battenberg blanket, I don't know if I'm going to work on it this month. If my yarn arrives before we leave, we're supposed to leave on August 8th to start traveling full-time in the van. If it arrives here to my parents' house before then, I will maybe take it with me. I'm also thinking about just leaving it here and getting it when I come back in November and having it kind of be precursor to the holidays, sort of a fun, relaxing crochet thing, because we'll be here for about 3 weeks in November. So I'm not sure yet. And then my travel blanket. I want to make a blanket that I work on, crochet on, throughout our trip. Something that I can get a skein of yarn, a special skein of yarn, like this yarn store is the only one that carries this color, or it's about that store, and I can make myself a shape. I'm thinking hexagon. Toaster. I'm thinking hexagon. I can make that shape, and then I can just be adding to that blanket. I'll probably just make shapes for the duration, and then eventually I'll put it all together and I'll have this beautiful blanket that is a memory. I'm imagining it will do several things for me. One, it will allow me to buy the yarn that I want to buy, because I know when we're traveling, I'm going to want to get yarn at the majority of the yarn stores that we go to, and then I'll want to make something from it. And this is such a doable thing. I'm thinking to just make a hexagon from each thing. And then with the leftovers of that yarn, I'm imagining I will just take them with me to my next stop and give them away to somebody. I know this is not a very cost-effective way to create a blanket. I am very aware of that, but I'm also thinking that I don't want to have the guilt of having to hang on to all the yarn that I get. I don't know if I'm explaining this in a very good way. It does sound very spoiled in a way that this is something that will probably be I'll be able to do. And yeah, I guess I recognize that, but I want to be able to have something that is a memory, if that makes sense. I'm also thinking about hanging on to, so this would be, I have to figure this out. This is what I need to do probably this week, is kind of figure out, practice making one of the shapes and how big it is, because I want it to be kind of big, because I want it to be like, I want to use a decent amount of yarn. And I'm also thinking about holding fingering weight yarn double, so they'll be even bigger and they'll be fast and I'll use more yarn. And that will be cool. I don't think I have a DK weight blanket. All my blankets are fingering weight, so this will be very different. And then what was the other point I was going to make? Oh, I need to do the math. I need to figure out, if I make X number of hexagons, how big will the blanket be? Because I'm hoping that this blanket will allow me to not just have 50 hexagons, but more than 50. So I can do this with multiple yarn stores in every state. But then I'm also thinking of hanging on to one bit of yarn from every state. And there's this really cool pattern. I can't remember what it is right now. If I find it, I'll put a picture on the screen, but it's a map of the United States, and I think it's in Tarja. It's going to be such a pain to knit, and I don't know if I will actually do it later on, but it's a fun thought where I could do each state in a different yarn from that state. So that would be, one yarn from each state. So let's say, for example, this next week, we're going to be going to 13 stores in Tennessee. So technically, I could probably get a yarn from each of those 13 stores and make a hexagon from each one for my hexagon blanket, right? But I would only want to keep one yarn for the state's blanket for Tennessee, because only one yarn would make up the state of Tennessee. Does that make sense? Basically, I need to think through this before I go, and ideally I would go ahead and make up one hexagon so I can practice it, see if I like doing it, if it's going to be a sustainable thing for me while I'm traveling. And oh, you know, another thing I didn't say, another reason why I would get rid of my yarn or give away my yarn on my journey is because I won't have the room to store it. And for me, it's not worth sending. I could send stuff back here to my parents' house, but I know me, and I know that I probably won't use, you know, partial skeins a second time. Does that make sense? Hopefully that doesn't sound too whatever, but that's something that I want to be able to do. And I love being able to give yarn to people. It's such a fun feeling and something that I wasn't able to do a few years ago. And now I'm in a really great spot where I can do that. And it's just so much fun. So those are my plans for August. Basically a lot of TBD, probably a lot of new projects casting on in the next week. I'm very excited. I love this stage of knitting that I'm in where new patterns are coming out. I'm like, yes, I'm going to start that. That's exactly what I was hoping for when I was eliminating my stash last year. And it just feels really good to be kind of reaping the benefits of all the discipline that it took last year to zero out my stash. How about we answer some questions? Our first question today is from Cheryl. Question: is it worth it to go to the festival, meaning Rhinebeck? Or can I get some of the yarn they showcase at my yarn stores in New York City at the Yarn Crawl? When you both said you didn't buy any yarn, it makes me wonder if the trip up there from Penn Station is worth it. I would have to take the subway from the Bronx just to get to the station, then 2 hours on the train. Did you buy the tickets to the festival online? So given the framing of this question, I'm kind of wondering if it was not on the podcast, but on our Rhinebeck video that Rebecca and I did 2 years ago. So maybe it wasn't on the podcast, but if it was, it doesn't matter. I'm going to answer it anyway. Okay, so let's talk about Rhinebeck. I also have some videos about Rhinebeck that can help you kind of see what it's like. The one that I did in 2022, I'll link that one below, is much more informative. I kind of try to share the layout of things and what to expect, because I know for me going to it the first time, I had no idea what to expect. And it's just not that you can exactly get everything from a video, but it can give you a lot more confidence in going into the show that you want, or like picking out what you want to do. So, is it worth it to go to Rhinebeck? It sounds like you're in New York City. You could take the train from Penn Station, which is a 2-hour train ride. I would say that Rhinebeck is really great for the experience. If you're looking to go for community, to meet people, to chat with people, to try some of the food, to see the animals, to do a little bit of shopping, then I think you should go to Rhinebeck, and specifically on Saturday, because that's when all of the meetups are on the hill. It's a really, really fun time. If you're going just for shopping, my opinion would be different. But I will preface this to say that I'm probably a little more unusual that I don't buy anything at Rhinebeck. I just don't buy a lot in general, at least at this stage in my life. That's not really true. I do buy yarn. Clearly, I'm planning to buy yarn at like tons of yarn stores across the United States for the next few years, but I tend to not buy a lot at festivals, at least right now. And that probably has a lot to do with how just I feel like lucky I am that I'm exposed to a lot of dyers and options in local yarn stores and online. So since you're in New York City, you know, we had similar exposure to a bunch of great yarn stores there. But at the kind of side indie festivals that happen on Friday, there's 3. There's Indie Untangled, Cake Palooza, and Wool and Folk. Those have a lot, to me, they have a lot more indie dyed yarn, smaller project bag makers, more curated stuff that for me is the type of shopping that I want to do. Again, for me. I cannot say the same for everybody. I also have a video from last year's Cake and Woolapalooza. Cakepalooza and Woolen Folk if you want to see what that was all about, and you can make your decision from there. So my recommendation is that if you're looking to shop, I would actually go on Friday. I would go to Cakepalooza and I would go to Woolen Folk or go to Indie Untangled, or you could do all three. The one issue you're going to have is that it is not going to be easy to get from place to place. In fact, it's very difficult to even get out of the train station. There is no Uber there. We were able to get a lift one day, but not other days. We were stuck at some of the places. We had to rely on the help of other knitters. So if you are going to want to go and shop, you might actually just want to rent a car. And then at that point, it becomes very expensive. And I know it's like not the same experience. So that's the truth though. That's just the way that it is up there. Best case scenario, you can take the train up and find a ride with somebody and like plan ahead. Maybe you know somebody that's going to be there, and that would be a really fun experience. If you are looking for more opportunities to hang out with the community and do a little bit of shopping, then Rhinebeck on Saturday is for you. If you are just wanting to go to Rhinebeck but avoid the crowds, go on Sunday. That's what I would do. If you're going up for the first time, nobody asked this, but if you're going up for the first time and you're there for the whole weekend, it is worth it to go on Friday to those shows, any of them. Woolen Folk, I would say, is one of the, to me, it's like the most bang for your buck because you're able to go for many, many hours. They just did it for the first time last year. They're in a new location this year, so I will be sharing in a video, of course, everything, but it's just such a great experience because you just get to hang out. Oh no, wait, this last year was their second year, I think. It was my first year. I have videos on all of them. And then as far as tickets, yes, you can get tickets to everything online. Cake, I think, still has tickets, but not for their first time slot. Probably same for Indie Untangled. Woolen Folk, I think we already have tickets for Woolen Folk too, but you can get tickets online. For the actual New York Sheep and Wool Festival, I'm not sure if the tickets are available yet, but they're also really easy to get in person. So don't feel like you have to get them online. I think they're maybe a couple dollars cheaper, but that's the cheapest ticket. It's the most affordable ticket going to Rhinebeck itself. Okay, hopefully that helped make your plans just a little bit. The next question is from Allison. Hi, Natalie. Thank you for your weekly podcast. I can't begin to tell you how many projects you've knitfluenced me to make. Oh, I like that, knitfluenced. My question is less of a technical question and more of an open-ended discussion. I love seeing other people's FOs, and I'm always in awe of how nice and neat everyone's projects look, except for mine. When it comes to looking at my own FOs, I tend to see every loose or uneven stitch or every single teeny tiny flaw to the point where it sometimes discourages me from knitting on my whips because I know I'm going to hate on the FO, even though others around me compliment my work and tell me they don't see anything wrong. Is this something you or anyone else has experienced? Okay, this is a question for the community too, so please reply in the comments. So, Allison, I bet your FOs look fine. Just off the top here, my guess is that you're being very hard on yourself for no reason. But I know that's not something that you can just like change the way you feel. So let me offer some more practical advice. First of all, I haven't experienced this with knitting, although I feel like definitely having that feeling where you're more critical on your own, maybe your own body or your own hair or your own handwriting or I don't know, anything that you do, pictures of yourself, right? But then when you look at other people, your lens is different. You're looking at them for the whole person. You're not looking at flaws. That's true, right? Like I feel like somebody pointed something out the other day about themselves and I was like, I wouldn't have even seen that if you hadn't said anything about it, you know? So I feel like that is probably maybe what's happening here. But let's talk about some practical things you can do to appreciate your knitting in the process that may help with the FO. So one, something that I find really helps me to just enjoy the project more. It's not that I don't like how it looks, but I really like tidying my project as I go. So what that can look like is once I've moved past a certain point in the project, I'll go back up to, let's say it's a sweater. Once I've moved past the yoke, I will go up and I'll go ahead and do the neckline. I'll pick up all those stitches, I'll knit it, I'll weave in the end so that it looks really nice and tidy. This is more for keeping things interesting than really aesthetic, or just kind of keeping myself motivated. But I can imagine that could help a little bit with aesthetic, where you're not having to look at something that looks so unfinished, it looks more polished. Something else, just weaving in ends as I go is a really helpful thing. I was also curious when you were talking about this, if you block your projects, because all projects look uneven until you block them. Blocking is magical. If you already saw my picture of before when I grafted across that tank and then after, it removed so much of the stitches, the stitch unevenness. So maybe you're somebody who needs to stop halfway and block your project in the middle of a project. It's going to take you a little more time. You got to take it off the needles and stuff, but it's always a good thing to do to try things on when you're making garments anyway. So maybe that's something that you need to do. But I would just say go a little easier on yourself and don't judge something until it's done. When you're working on a project, it's a work in progress. It's not finished yet. If you block it and you still hate it, then maybe it wasn't meant to be. So anyone else who has any tips on this, please let Allison know down in the comments. That would be awesome. Next question is from Lori. Hi, Natalie. When you're out and about at yarn stores or anywhere else for that matter, I'm very curious if people recognize you. If so, I wonder how you feel about people coming up to you and introducing themselves. Okay, so when I'm at a yarn store or I'm at a festival, there are definitely times where people recognize me and come up and say they watch the podcast. When I'm out and about in the world, not so much, although it has happened before. One time I was walking through Central Park just before we moved away and happened to run into a knitter that watches the podcast, which was super cool. Kent one time was walking through Dallas and somebody recognized him, which is really funny. So it happens mostly in situations that are, about knitting, about yarn and things like that. I definitely want people to come up and say hi. I especially want you to introduce yourself, because this is what happens when I meet people, whether it's that kind of a situation where we know each other through the knitting world, or and we haven't met yet, or just other situations. I feel like when somebody introduces themselves, my mind is and blanks for a second, and then I immediately forget your name. So I'm somebody who thinks it's okay to ask somebody's name multiple times. I would rather know your name and know how to say it right and ask than pretend that I heard your name. So I want you to do the same for me. You can introduce yourself several times. I love it when you let me know how we know each other, especially if we met before, because for situations such as Rhinebeck, there are lots and lots of meet and greets. And so it can be hard to keep track of everyone that you've met. So I love it when somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm in the Love and Stitches membership, or I took Perfect Fit Socks, I watch your podcast, or we met last year at Rhinebeck, or something like that. That just helps me or my Instagram is this. A lot of times I know your Instagram, but I've only seen a picture of you this small, or I've seen you in Zoom this small, or something like that. So it helps me a lot when you introduce yourself, and I love it because then I can make a connection, I can form a memory, and then meet you again, which is super, super great. And I also love if you want to take a picture or anything like that, I am super down for that. Just ask. I don't want to assume. I feel very awkward about saying, do you want to take a picture? Because I'm sure some people are like, no, or why would I want that? So I'm cool with it if that's something that you want. Definitely down for that. Oh my gosh, my computer case just broke. Well, it's been going strong for a long time, so it'll be fine. It's just a quarter. It'll be great. So yeah, definitely. I am so happy with that. I guess the only thing that I would say is if I'm currently talking to somebody else, just kind of catch my eye or something, just the normal politeness rules of like not interrupting, etc. I really didn't even need to say that, did I? That was a given. Let's go on to the next question. This one is from Knitting Nursey. Oh gosh, I can't read it. Nursey? Well, let's just answer your question. Hi, I really enjoy your podcast. Can you rate the ChiaoGoo Forte needles? Will you please make a tutorial for the float totes? I have the pattern, however, I don't crochet. Please help. You're amazing, and I can't wait to see more. Oh, and what brand of crochet hooks do you use? 3 questions in one. I got you. Even though I can't say your name, so sorry. Your username. So first, can I rate the ChiaoGoo Forte needles? So the ChiaoGoo Forte needles are from ChiaoGoo, obviously. Are they wooden in the shaft? Yeah, I think they're a wooden shaft with metal tips, and they're an interchangeable needle set, huge range of sizes. I was able to snag them while they were still being made. They're no longer being made, but they have or they're coming out with a Forte 2.0 that instead of wood, it's carbon fiber. I believe I'm correct on that, which is going to be stronger. I think a lot of people had issues with the wood needles breaking. I didn't have an issue with them breaking. I was very careful to make sure I'm always twisting them, at the joins. Not saying that other people like broke them because they weren't using them right, but I have been extra careful with them. So I would rate the ChiaoGoo Forte needles as just not for me. I actually tried to use them again for what was it? Ribbing on one of my swatches, and I just don't like something very weird about them. For some reason, I use ChiaoGoo fully metal needles for socks, for hats, and it doesn't bother me at all. When I use the ChiaoGoo Forte needles, which just have metal at the tip, I get like a feeling in my teeth of like the metal scraping. It's like I cannot explain it, and I don't like it. And it's really a bummer because the needles are actually awesome. They are such a good, I thought they would be so perfect for me because I like the slick and the pointiness of a metal needle tip, but I really like the warmth of a wood needle. So I've just really decided that they're probably not something that is going to work for me. And that's just a for me thing. Other than that, I would say they're a great needle. They definitely have some issues, I think the breaking and stuff, but I'd probably give them like an 8 out of 10. They come in the needles themselves are great. They come in a really great needle case with all kinds of accessories. The only other downside is that the twisty, like the needles that spin, your stitches can get caught in the cord. It's not smooth enough. I hope they worked on that transition too. Okay, float tote tutorial. I have been saying this for more than a year, but I do plan on doing tutorials for my float tote. I actually have one right here. I'm using it for my tessellated because how else can you sanely manage 3 yarns at once? This is the 3 skein float tote. I am planning to make a couple changes to the pattern and do a tutorial and re-release the pattern at some point. The tutorials will not be available publicly on YouTube because it's a paid for pattern. So I don't want to share, how to make the pattern for free when I've put a lot of work into it and it's a paid for pattern. But I love doing that for my paid for patterns. Right now is not a good time for me to do it. So again, we're going to be back here in November. So I'm kind of thinking that might be float tote tutorial time. We'll see. And then the last question was, what brand of crochet hooks do you use? I absolutely love the Clover Amour hooks. They have a soft handle that's flat on one side, which I just find works so great for my grip. I'm going to link the set on Amazon because Amazon has a great price on it. I think you can get the same price at a craft store if you use a coupon, but Amazon most of the time just has it at like $40 for 8 hooks, which is a great price. So try one out first, make sure you like it. If you like it, I would definitely grab the set, especially their steel crochet hook set, because once you get down to those really small hooks, it can be so hard to hold on to them, but then even the steel hooks have that awesome handle which is super, super great. So I absolutely love those, but everyone is different. So find something that you like. There is one more question, but I'm going to actually save it for the end of the podcast for our tip of the week. So we'll get to that one soon. If you do have any questions for me, make sure to leave them down below, but put in the front #question so I can make sure to answer it in the next podcast. We're going to have a super quick news segment today because there was no video on Tuesday. There was no video on Tuesday. I actually don't know what's coming up either. I just kind of needed a little bit of a break from videos, I guess. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think what really happened. It's just, there's a lot of mental fatigue, I think, from moving and transitioning. And I just haven't felt like ready to record a video, which is not good. I guess not good for the future of the videos, but there wasn't anything that I felt like ready to create personally this week or last week rather. And so I just didn't. I decided I needed a week off from Tuesday videos. And as far as what's coming next week, I am not 100% sure yet. I keep saying I'm going to do a sock tour, but the thought of getting all my socks out and figuring out all the projects sounds really overwhelming. I even thought about maybe just going live and pulling my socks out one at a time and like chatting with y'all and talking about them, but I didn't know if that would sound interesting to people. So I want to do something with my socks and talk about them and get rid of some at the same time. So I don't know, maybe if you have any thoughts on that, let me know. We're definitely going to have a ton of yarn store tour videos and videos about different events that we're going to coming up. That's about to be the majority of the Tuesday videos, but I'll have other stuff here and there as well. So I just need to kind of get that creative energy back and figure out what I want to make. So we'll be coming back to our regularly scheduled videos starting next week. There is an event coming up. It is called the Great Tennessee Yarn Tour. It starts on August 4th and goes through August 27th. This is the first year of the Great Tennessee Yarn Tour, and it includes shops pretty much all over East Tennessee. And I think there's one that's not quite in East Tennessee, but we're going to be going to all of the shops next week. I'm really excited for it. And I know we're going to one shop between Nashville and Chattanooga, I think. And then we're going to Chattanooga and then making our way up to Knoxville. We're attempting to do all of the shops in 3 days. So I'm really excited about it. And we've been reaching out to all of the stores that are on the tour. And I think we've heard back from all of them that they are cool with us getting some footage. So I will be bringing a YouTube video about lots of different yarn shops and what you can expect on the yarn tour, and hopefully getting that out quickly enough that if you're going to the yarn tour on the later half of it, like in the last week before the 27th of August, you'll get a little preview of what to expect. So that will be really, really fun. One other thing, I did hear from another one of our Knitty City winners. Thank you so much. But I am still waiting to hear from Kathy. So I'll put your comment here on the screen. Kathy, if you see this, if you can send me an email, natalie@knittynatty.com. I would love to send out your prize before we are away. I'm not going to be able to bring it with me, so I want to get that out to you before we leave Tennessee. This week we had some really fun things going on. I mean, nothing too crazy, but got to go to Bliss, got to hang out with my family. That's always a good thing. I went to Bliss Yarn's Thursday night knit night this week and worked on my hat while I was there. I pretty much worked on my hat from Monday to Friday, and then I picked up my tank. And I guess I did swatches in between. It was an efficient week in that way, but there was a time where I thought, wow, all I'm working on is the hat this week. I am going to have nothing new to talk about on the podcast. And that did not end up being the case. So that's really fun. We also went to trivia again, the same place we went last week. It's called Yardbirds Hot Chicken. And this time we went with my brother and his wife and two of our other friends, and we won again. We were actually really shocked. This time there were more people there, but the same number of teams. So 2 weeks ago, there was 3 teams. We were the largest team of 6. And then this week there were also 3 teams, but it was our team of 6 and then like a huge group of friends that split into 2 teams. So it was fun because it's smaller. There's not a ton of people there. The same person who hosted the trivia was there again, so she knew us and was like just a fun person to talk to. Erica, I think is her name. And we were so shocked when we won again because we started out losing. But it was really fun. We got food. We got to hang out with my my family and some friends, and then we won trivia. So that was super great. And because we won a gift certificate last week, Kent and I had our meal paid for by our gift certificate, and then this week the prize went to somebody else. So it was fun. I think we're going to go back again and try to defend our title one more time and just have a good time. On Saturday, I went to Bliss Yarns again. I was supposed to meet 2 people on Thursday night, and both of them got caught up with work and weren't able to come. And so I was kind of thinking out loud to Kent, like, well, I don't know, I wasn't planning to go to Bliss this weekend. I actually have a lot of work to do. Getting things ready for the membership to open has been a lot of computer work. And so I was just feeling a little overwhelmed. And Kent was like, why don't you just go to Bliss on Saturday? And I thought, oh yeah, why don't I just go to Bliss on Saturday? So I went to Bliss again on Saturday, and I got to meet Leslie and Ruthie, which was super great. Leslie is a Love and Stitches member, and Ruthie, I think, watches the podcast and also is taking Perfect Fit socks. But we had been emailing, and so I just told both of them, like, hey, gonna be there on Saturday. If you can make it, great. If you can't, don't worry. And they both were able to make it, and it was really great. There was also a big crowd there at Bliss on Saturday, so I got to see a lot of other friends, and it was just a really lovely time. On Saturday night, we went over to my brother's house, my brother and his wife, and Kent grilled out for us. So my sister-in-law, like, just puts together the most amazing snacks. She put together a charcuterie board this time that was absolutely delicious. It was so good. We played I guess Ken had something going on, something he had to be on Zoom for. And so we ate dinner a little bit late. So we kind of ate our charcuterie and then played some games. So we were playing What Do You Meme? And I had just gotten my tank top back on the needles. And so I was trying to get that last inch done so I could switch over to the ribbing. I really wanted to finish it. Yeah, but then Kent grilled out some food for us, and it was just a really lovely time. Toaster, of course, came with us. He absolutely loves going over to my brother's house. They have somewhere between a mini and standard poodle, and he loves playing with him. So he loves that. We also went over on Sunday, and he did not want to leave. We were all, usually when we're like getting ready to go out the door, putting on our shoes and stuff, your dog is right by you. And Toaster was like settled into the couch, squished into the pillows. He did not want to leave. It was very, very cute. I finished a book this week. I finished Claws in Deep by J.B. Sharp. It was super quick read. I think it was like a 2-hour read or something. At least that's what my Kindle said. Super quick, dirty romance, kind of quick, cute story. So it was great. And then I needed something else to read, and my Book of the Month books weren't here yet. And this was on Wednesday. Yeah, I think I finished my book Wednesday morning. And oh, I totally forgot. I went on Wednesday night to a Nashville knitters group that met up at a brewery, which was really, really fun. So I got to meet some new people. I already knew one person, which was really fun. We had met at Bliss, so that was really great. So when I was there on Wednesday, some of y'all are going to be so excited about this, but I was talking about how I didn't have a book to read. I needed to pick something out that night. I didn't really know what I wanted to read next. And again, my Book of the Month books weren't here yet. So I needed something like immediately, right? And just so happened that Lindsay had a book that had just been returned to her by one of the other knitters in the group. And so she let me borrow it. So I am reading A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. It is the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read the first one, which is called A Court of Thorns and Roses, earlier this year. I had mixed feelings about it. It was my first book for like a world building fairy tale sort of book. I would say that's like written for adults. So I had a hard time with it because it was a lot slower than I anticipated it was going to be. I can't say that I didn't enjoy it, but I can say that I enjoy a faster paced book. And so I really wasn't super keen on even finishing the book or starting the next one. But a lot of you encouraged me and you said that the second book is so good, you have to keep going, and that the book picks up pace. By the time I got to the last 200 pages, I think, of A Court of Thorns and Roses, I was definitely like, okay, I want to see what happens next. So I decided I was going to read A Court of Mist and Fury eventually. I had it on hold at the library. I think it came through once and I was already reading several other books. And so I was like, oh, let me get this later on. So it was just perfect timing. I needed a book to read. Lindsay had it right there. Like she was like, do you want to just take this? I was like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. So I'm about 250 pages in. And I have been trying my hardest. I want to finish this, not by this Wednesday. I was hoping I could finish it by this Wednesday before the knit group again, but hopefully before we leave on August 8th, I want to finish it. So I'm about 250 pages into a book that's about a little over 600 pages, which for me is very long, but I'm enjoying it. I can't say it's like one of those, like a thriller, like where I just want to keep reading to the next page and see what happens next. But there is an element of like, I'm invested in the story now, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure where it's leading me. I don't really know exactly where it's going to go, but I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it. I think I read about 100 pages last night. I went to bed early so I could read, and it was great. So I know a lot of y'all probably going to be happy about that because you've been saying that A Court of Thorns and Roses is just so, so good. I was thinking about reading Fourth Wing, which, there's a fuzz, which seems to be really popular right now. So I was debating buying that one because there's no way, like I won't get it for like 2 years from the library. But this is actually perfect. It's perfect for right now. So I'm very excited about that. TV, I didn't write anything down. We've not really been watching a ton of TV aside from my usual Bachelorette. So probably not really much to report there. One of our favorite YouTube channels, it's called Jetlag the Game, where it's a group of guys. Sometimes they bring in a guest, a special guest, but it's a group of guys that they just make these games up where they travel around the US or maybe they're in another country. So this past season just finished and they were in Japan playing Capture the Flag. So their first round of Capture the Flag was in Tokyo and they were taking trains to capture the flag. And then their second round was like a little further into the country. And then their third round was the entirety of Japan. It's a really fun channel. If you enjoy anything like that, I would encourage you to check out Jetlag the Game. They have episodes once a week, and then there's like a couple months between seasons. So I think they've done 6 seasons on YouTube right now, and then there's one on their like paid for platform that's not accessible on YouTube. We haven't watched that one yet, but everything's really, really good, and I'm excited for them to come out with a new one. That brings us to our tip of the week. And for this, I'm actually going back into the podcast questions because we had one that related directly to a tutorial. So I thought this would be good timing. This one is from Katie Stokely. You talked a bit about ripping back your project. Can you talk a bit about how to do this safely, as in without losing stitches? I know about the existence of lifelines, but don't use them often. Fixing mistakes is the hardest part of knitting. I know it can be really tricky to be able to fix mistakes in knitting. I feel like there's that like different philosophy where between crochet and knitting where there's benefits to both. In crochet, to fix a mistake, it feels a lot safer, but it's not as flexible. You mostly need to actually rip out your stitches and go back to where you made the mistake to fix it. I have before like managed to crochet into the row below to kind of pick things up, but it's not perfect, if that makes sense, because crochet is just done differently. Each stitch is essentially finished off as you work it, whereas in knitting, everything is live. So it's a lot riskier because if you drop a stitch, it's like, oh my gosh, you can't just scoop it back up. You have to make sure you get it the right way or make sure you get it if it dropped down. But knitting is all connected. So you can actually drop down and create a new stitch or create a decrease where there wasn't one before. It's a lot more flexible, but you have to know what you're doing, and this takes time. So, my nose so itchy. So don't feel bad. It does take some time. But I do have a tip for you about how to rip back. And I know I showed already kind of in a photo tutorial the steps that I took, but the first step in that is picking up stitches. And I've got a tutorial on how to do that, how you can pick up your stitches to either, you don't have to be cutting out part of your project to do this. It could be as simple as you've knit an inch too far, and rather than going stitch by stitch on your needles and tinking back your, 6 rows of knitting, you can actually safely remove your needle or leave it and get another needle, and you can pick up 6 rows below with your needle, then rip everything back. And it's not as hard as you think. It takes a little patience, and takes a little time. So you can do it. So I will link my tutorial on, it's called Ripping Stitches Back to Frog. But it's the same thing that I did to actually take out a whole section of my sweater. I've also done it before where I knit my sweater too short, but I didn't want to redo the ribbing on the bottom and the tubular bind off. So I cut into things, I knit a little further, and then I reattach them. So it's all the same, so all a similar technique, but I'll link that down below. You never know when it's gonna come in handy, and it's something you can do as an afterthought. Lifelines are only good if you do them in advance and they're in the right spot, but you can place your own lifeline with a knitting needle at any time, which is great. So hopefully that helps you, Katie, and anyone else who might be in that situation. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. The book of the month link will be down below if you want to check it out and try it out. And I will see all of you in the next one.